I've got new information from the New York Times.
They said, evening of December 20th, hey, Justin, here's all this horrible stuff we're going to print about you. You have until tomorrow at noon. We'd love to hear your response. He engages with them. He says, okay.
Text messages and other documents that we've obtained reveal what really happened.
The New York Times just uncovered disturbing new revelations about the Blake Lively scandal, and it's far more explosive than anyone anticipated. Justin Baldoni has finally spoken up, offering receipts that directly contradict Blake's narrative. After analyzing the timeline and every public statement, I found the smoking gun that exposes what actually happened on the It Ends With Us set. This isn't just celebrity gossip. It's a strategic PR operation unraveling into a full-fledged disaster.
New information from the New York Times revolving around the Blake Lively, Justin Baldoni case, right? And that information is that there are 3 different versions of the subheadline of the New York Times article, the smear campaign that they said we can bury anyone inside a Hollywood smear machine. There are 3 different versions. Now, why is this interesting? Well, some people are saying this is so sinister that they would make all these different versions and change it. Are they doing it for legal reasons? Some people that say they're journalists say, no, it's for search engine optimization. Well, we're going to kind of dive into this. Again, I found this on Blake Lively's Snark, but also Reputation 911 is a crisis PR expert, and he's got some really good opinions about this and also about why New York Times didn't give Justin Baldoni much time to respond to that smear campaign that they wrote about him. It's kind of ironic, right? They were saying, oh, he smeared Blake, but they were kind of smearing him because, as it turns out, they didn't really let him get his side of the story yet. All right, here is the update on the multiple edits. And by the way, this was found. They found the multiple edits, not because the New York Times announced it, but because they used the Wayback Machine or whatever the hell it's called, which scrubs the internet and saves previous versions of news articles and other things. It keeps the receipts, so you can't do what they call a dirty edit. Have a listen.
Hey everyone, in December, the New York Times published a now infamous article alleging a smear campaign against Blake Lively by Justin Baldoni and his PR team. In a recent video, I walked through subtle edits that were made to the subheadline of the original version of the article, where in the original it reads, "A legal complaint lays out." In the subsequently edited version, it reads, "Private messages detail." As I was reviewing the data, I realized that there are actually 3 versions of the subheadline. So the initial version reads, "A legal complaint lays out an alleged campaign to tarnish Blake Lively." The second version reads, "Private messages detail an alleged campaign to smear Blake Lively." So new word replacing tarnish. And in the third version, which is the current version that you see now when you go to the New York Times website, we have "Private messages detail an alleged campaign to tarnish Blake Lively." So in the new version, or the most recent version, the current version, they switched from smear.
Remember when everyone assumed Blake Lively was the victim in the It Ends With Us controversy? The New York Times just published an interview that's flipping that storyline completely. After months of silence, Justin Baldoni finally broke his silence. And what he disclosed presents a radically different version of events than the one Blake has been promoting. I end this bombshell breakdown here. Justin didn't just defend himself, he brought receipts. Real ones. The kind that force you to rethink everything you thought you understood about this feud. While Blake's been painting herself as a powerless actress who was mistreated on set, Justin's detailed recollection shows she was actually steering the ship from the start. One of the most eye-opening parts of the interview, Justin pinpoints exactly when the conflict began. And it wasn't during those intimate scenes Blake cited. According to him, the friction started far earlier, during pre-production, when a power battle over creative control took root. The first warning signs appeared during our initial production meetings in March, Justin told The Times. He says Blake demanded final approval over everything from script changes to marketing decisions, requests far beyond what's typical for an actor. And this wasn't just vague finger-pointing. Justin provided the journalist with exact dates and precise accounts of meetings that Blake's story conveniently ignores. One such event was an April 15th meeting where Blake reportedly showed up with a 30-page document listing changes she wanted for the script and schedule, changes that significantly increased her screen time, while diminishing the roles of other characters. What makes the interview especially credible is that it wasn't just Justin speaking. The Times also spoke to 5 separate production team members who independently confirmed his account and backed up his version of the timeline. These sources, speaking anonymously, stated that Blake was making executive-level decisions well before the cameras even rolled. In my 20 years in this industry, I've never seen an actor with this much authority who wasn't also a producer, one senior crew member told The Times. She was basically co-directing, just without the official credit. The article also describes production meetings where Blake's behavior stunned even seasoned veterans. Several sources said she regularly overruled department heads, making decisions on set design, costume elements, even for characters she didn't portray. But the most incriminating detail, official production documents obtained by The Times, show Blake had formal, contractual approval authority that no other actor had. These documents, dated months before shooting began, gave her final say over things like script revisions, casting, and the film's marketing approach. These weren't just ideas, Justin said. They were legal powers she negotiated into her contract. That imbalance affected everything. The interview also dismantles Blake's narrative about feeling unsafe during intimate scenes. Production records show she had direct input on those moments months ahead of filming. In fact, she allegedly pushed to heighten certain intimate elements, while requesting that others be removed. This isn't just a celebrity conflict. It's a carefully crafted PR image disintegrating in real time. And it's not a good look for Blake.
They said, evening of December 20th, hey, Justin, here's all this horrible stuff we're going to print about you. You have until tomorrow at noon. We'd love to hear your response. He engages with them. He says, okay, here is some information. I think he gave it to them on the morning of the 21st. Here's some partial information. I'm still working on it. I'm going to get the rest of this information or whatever before noon. And New York Times prints a story prior to noon with the partial information. And my guess is they were worried another outlet was going to hit this story. So what he's saying is that, hey, we had a promise here together that you were going to give me till noon. I said, okay, I was cooperating with you. You ran the story before noon without my complete information, and therefore you didn't vet this properly, and you broke our promise. Super creative claim. Well, this goes to the second complaint that he has against them, or cause of action, which is for breaching a promise. And so what clearly the New York Times, according to even to that clip, they investigated, they spent a lot of time, they vouched for these claims. They approached Justin and Wayfarer on the evening of December 20th, so 5 days before Christmas. It's the first time he's being contacted and by the media, and they're saying, hey, we're running a story tomorrow at noon, and we'd like your comment on that. So, you and I have dealt with stuff like this before. This is a common tactic by the media, and they're not really doing it with any expectation of getting a response from the subject or target of their story. What they're trying to do is protect themselves legally by saying, hey, we reached out. So you'll see these stories and start looking at these if you follow mainstream media. You'll see a hit piece or a story that's really negative against somebody, and it'll always say, we reached out to the representatives of this person or this person directly, and we did not receive a response as the date of the printing of the story. What they leave out is it was like an hour ago they picked up the phone.
Right.
And so now they're saying like, hey, we tried to fact check. We gave you the opportunity. Oh, you didn't respond. Oh, if you would have responded, we would have maybe thought of things differently. But hey, we just went with what we had, so we can't be sued. So this is what they're doing. The reason why they want to do this so quickly is that they don't want the target to come over the top with their own article, with their own aligned media outlet, which all exist. All right. So Blake Lively's aligned with New York Times. Justin and Wayfarer might have aligned with another media outlet, run and got their own story out there first, beat New York Times to the punch. They never want that happening, so that's why they don't give the target any meaningful opportunity.
Those production records were only the beginning of what Blake Lively's been concealing. Ever notice how her timeline never quite made sense? Well, Justin Baldoni has now released a comprehensive timeline, backed by emails, meeting notes, and calendar entries. That tells a radically different story, one that shows Blake began constructing her victim narrative months before any supposed tension emerged. Let's talk about what Blake hasn't told her fans. According to Justin's timeline, Blake began asserting control over the project as early as January 12th, 3 full months before filming began. That's when she started attending high-level executive meetings that actors usually don't even have access to. And she didn't arrive empty-handed. She brought extensive notes and proposed changes for nearly every aspect of production. One particularly telling email, dated February 8th, shows Blake writing to the costume department. I've reconsidered Lily's wardrobe for the third act. The current choices don't reflect my vision for the character. Please prepare new options by Friday. Her vision. Since when does a non-producer override the authority of the costume designer? Things escalated on March 3rd when Blake showed up to a meeting meant for department heads and executives. According to meeting minutes, she didn't just sit in, she led discussions on set design, lighting setups, even camera movements. 3 crew members later confirmed she dominated these highly technical conversations despite lacking any formal training or position in those areas. But here's the real red flag. On March 17th, Blake emailed the editing department directly, instructing them to prioritize scenes where her character appeared prominently. She bypassed Justin, the director, and the film's producers entirely. One editor, speaking anonymously, said, "I've never received scene orders from an actor. That's not how filmmaking works." Then came the script fiasco. On April 2nd, Blake personally distributed rewritten script pages to the cast, edits she made without consulting Colleen Hoover, the original author. These revisions significantly elevated Blake's role while minimizing others. When Colleen found out, she was reportedly stunned and deeply hurt, but didn't feel she had the clout to push back, given Blake's expanding influence. Behind the scenes, Blake's PR machine was already spinning. An internal memo from February 22nd outlined a strategy to portray Blake as the creative force behind the movie's success. It even included backup plans in case production conflict emerged. All of this happened before any supposed on-set disputes. Perhaps the most revealing detail, a calendar entry from April 30th shows Blake met privately with studio executives, without Justin's knowledge. At that meeting, she presented a document titled Creative Vision Realignment. According to 3 insiders, this was effectively a proposal to restructure leadership and give Blake even greater control, including changes that would further reduce Justin's authority as director. This isn't just artistic disagreement, it's a pattern, and the receipts are damning.
Suit against the New York Times is hard. It's very hard to win these types of suits. But what's interesting is his response is a sort of mention of a video in tandem with the release of the article. I want to play it quickly. Wait, I'll have it. Sorry, that's me sending you the Zoom link. Here it is. Here is the clip in question. Now, this video
filed on Friday.
Thank you to
Private
Citizen
text
Journalist
messages.
for putting it on easily accessible. This was part of the article. I paid for the New York Times. It's not showing up right now. We're trying to tape quickly, but in there I can verify there was a video that Megan Twohey sort of edited. So not only, Chris, did they compile a massive article with all the text and all the research, they went and edited a video as well, all within like 24 hours, which seems incredibly
And other
unrealistic. But
documents
here's that
that
video.
we've obtained reveal what really happened. A campaign to tarnish Lively after she alleged that Justin Baldoni, her co-star and director, and Jamie Heath, the producer, had engaged in misconduct while shooting the film.
Now, again, keyword there, the alleged smear campaign, but listen to what Megan herself, the author, says.
In a legal complaint Lively filed on Friday, private text messages and other documents that we've obtained reveal what really happened.
So right there, Chris, that's not an opinion. That's not a maybe. That's not a what really happened. Now, is that going to be problematic for them moving forward? Well, it's true, because even if you have till noon, that you'd think they'd still take time to put his responses in the article, right? And instead, they just released it a couple hours earlier. One more thing while we have you on this, just because I don't want to take this too long, but they're bringing up the whole California versus New York, and they're arguing that California's tort claims, et cetera, damages in California are different because make their personal and professional homes. They may make claims in California. So they're basically using this. You guys can pause and read this more specific to get in the nitty gritty, but clearly they're trying to change where it goes. What is your thoughts on that? Ken, since this is in New York, is the fact that they live in California and California has these rights, will that help them too?
Yeah, so the case is pending in New York, but what Justin is saying is that California's substantive law should apply on this placing somebody in a false light. So California recognizes a claim for damages or for money for placing somebody in a false light. New York doesn't have that same law. What Justin, I think, is correctly saying is that, hey, I'm a California guy. My company, I guess, is California. All these other people are in California. You, New York Times, based in New York, knew that publishing this story would impact me and others in California. So you reached out and touched us in California, so now California law applies.
Interesting. So I guess, because I know previously we talked about how hard this case is. Does this give you pause now to think maybe they do have a shot?
Yeah, I think it's extraordinarily difficult to sue a media outlet and be successful. Most of these are done just for press, like, oh, I'm suing the New York Times for all this money, and they end up getting, devastated. Here, I think he has a pathway. And even if it doesn't succeed, meaning he doesn't get to a jury or a jury says, hey, I'm going to give you $1 or something like that, I like that he's exposing this because, we hope that journalists would actually investigate completely. We hope that journalists would give each side a fair chance rather than smearing and destroying one side on partial information, or even worse, because they're biased against that person. So I like that he's exposing this.
Well, and the irony of the title, right, Chris? We can bury anyone inside the Hollywood smear machine. The hypocrisy that Blake and the New York Times were doing the same exact thing. I mean, that's hard to ignore, no?
Well, that's classic projection, and we saw that in Depp Heard. There's so many parallels. So the projection technique is the abusive person, the aggressor who's taking advantage of this weaker party will project all of that onto the victim. So they'll say, no, I'm not the aggressor. I'm the victim. Johnny is the aggressor. Baldoni,
Justin, yeah.
He's the bad guy. So whatever she did, she accuses him of. Very effective, very difficult to dismantle, but he's doing.
That secret creative vision realignment meeting wasn't even Blake Lively's boldest play. Justin Baldoni just revealed shocking receipts about the intimate scenes, and they completely destroy Blake's credibility. How can you accuse someone of crossing boundaries when there's documented proof that not only did you approve those scenes, you directed how they should be shot? Let's talk about the smoking gun evidence Justin released. We're not talking vague accusations here. We're talking about concrete documentation, production notes, emails, and signatures, all in Blake's own handwriting, and all telling a story that contradicts the narrative she's been selling. Remember those intimate scenes Blake claimed made her uncomfortable? Justin produced production notes dated February 18th showing that she didn't just approve them, she expanded them. In her own handwriting, Blake wrote, "The bedroom scene should be longer and more emotional to reflect Lily's arc." She even sketched out camera angles she wanted for that sequence. And it doesn't stop there. 3 crew members have now signed sworn statements confirming that Blake wasn't just performing in those scenes, she was also co-directing. Makeup artist Vanessa Torres said Blake would regularly stop mid-shoot to instruct camera ops, saying things like, "Be sure you're on my left side," or "This needs to be a tight shot." But the most jaw-dropping part, meeting minutes from March 22nd show Blake explicitly turned down a professional intimacy coordinator. When producers suggested bringing in expert Sarah Alden, Blake reportedly responded, "That won't be needed. I'll handle those scenes myself with Justin." And yet, months later, she criticized the production for failing to offer oversight during those same scenes. Behind the scenes, crew members were growing increasingly frustrated. Cinematographer David Chun texted the first AD on May 9th, "Blake just rewrote the entire bedroom scene again. That's the 3rd time this week. We're way behind." Another message from the script supervisor to the production manager read, "Blake wants 8 more takes of the kiss scene. Justin looks drained. We're already 2 hours behind." But here's the ultimate bombshell Justin released signed. Approval forms from June 15th showing Blake approved the final edit of every intimate scene. Her signature appears next to comments like, "Perfect, exactly what I imagined. And this really shows Lily's vulnerability." And on June 20th, she emailed the editors, "The intimate scenes are cutting beautifully. The pacing is just what we talked about. Don't change a thing." And yet, somehow, we're expected to believe she was the victim? The receipts paint a very different picture.
I think curiosity that people have about the New York Times is still wondering how deeply involved were they with Blake Lively's team to craft this story? Is it because they believed Blake Lively wholeheartedly and they were blinded to Justin Baldoni's side? What led them to spend months putting this story together and only to give hours at best to Justin Baldoni to respond? Well, here's another video from Reputation 911 explaining that it's common practice, although not a good practice, for journalists to not give a lot of time for someone to respond, lest it changes the story that they've already, curated.
Hey everyone, wanted to shed light on why the New York Times went to Justin Baldoni and his team the night before they published their article in December that alleged a smear campaign against Blake Lively by Baldoni and his camp. So what generally occurs when a publication writes a negative story, or what will ultimately be a negative story about a subject, is that they often will choose, and this is normal, they will choose to go to that subject for comment at the last possible hour.
And boy, did they wait. It was Friday night at like 8 or 10 p.m. What's the difference, right? On the West Coast, when they got in touch with Justin, when they emailed Justin Baldoni saying, we'd like for you to let us know, they asked for like the following day at noon or whatever for him to respond. And then they ended up posting the story early. So there was no shot, even if you got the email right away, that you were going to respond to this. I mean, that shouldn't be fair because, a lot of times when you'll have some damning article and then they'll say, oh, in the other side, we contacted them for comment and they did not respond. It's like, you got to give them a fair shot, right? I guess you don't.
They do this for two reasons. One, they want to check a box in saying that they actually went to the person or subject for comment. And two, they go to them late because they don't want to upset the narrative that they've worked on and written. I mean, that is clear as day. It happens every time one of these stories comes out. It's strategic.
Well, it's significant. So in the United States, where this lawsuit is pending, it's very difficult to sue a journalist, media outlet, because we have this First Amendment protection for the press. And that's super important because powerful people, would be able to destroy a journalist or media outlet by suing them for defamation or libel and keep them from reporting the truth. And so we have given, as a matter of policy, massive protections for the media and other journalists to fairly comment on stories that have not been proven to be true yet or not, so we can get this word out here. Now, and that's what the New York Times is coming back and saying, look, we're not Blake Lively. We're not the ones making the allegation. We're just fairly reporting on what Blake is suing Justin and Wayfarer for. And if that's all they did, they would be absolutely protected. But that's not what happened. According to this video that we're seeing, that clip, they're going in vouching for the story. That's where they made the mistake. If they would have said, Blake alleges that, or according to Blake, blah, 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 this happened, they'd be protected. But they said, and her title is investigative journalist. So she's investigative journalist for the New York Times. So that is implying that she's done an investigation. She's actually looked in this. We can trust her. We can trust the New York Times. They've done their vetting. That's the representation impliedly it's being made. And she's saying, yes, there's a lawsuit by Blake, but we, the New York Times, have looked into it, and this is what really happened. So now they're stating as a fact, not as an opinion, that this happened, and that's how they're going to get into it.
And there it is. This entire scandal has just been flipped upside down. Justin Baldoni's New York Times interview didn't just defend his name. It revealed what might be one of the most deliberate PR campaigns in recent Hollywood history. The most unbelievable part? Blake knew the truth the whole time. Those approval forms, handwritten by her. The emails giving direction for intimate scenes. The meeting minutes where she declined an intimacy coordinator. It was all documented, all time-stamped, all irrefutable, all while she publicly positioned herself as disrespected and overruled. This isn't just Hollywood gossip anymore. It's a masterclass in media manipulation that nearly succeeded. And it raises bigger questions. How many other Hollywood scandals are rooted in carefully orchestrated lies? How many public sympathy waves are the result of long-term PR strategy? Because clearly, the truth isn't always in Instagram posts or official statements. Sometimes, all it takes is one person armed with receipts to bring down the whole house of cards. And this time, that person was